In this episode, we look at some of the tools Leverage uses to constantly optimize our service. We feel it's our duty to test and perfect these models in order to equip you, our clients and community, with the right information. Learn some of our tried and tested techniques to get the most out of popular tools like Slack, Trello, and more.
All right, guys. Well, welcome to our weekly webinar. Today, we're going to focus on best practices for Slack. And what I'm going to do on these weekly webinars is I'm going to either interview people. We're going to switch it up. Some weeks we might interview people that are clients. Other weeks, what we might do is have a topic like we are today. And then obviously, we're going to set you guys up today inside of the members only Slack account. So if there's topics that you guys want me to go over, just DM me or talk about it in the channel, and I'll create content for these calls around that. So today's topic is about Slack. So I'm sure you guys, if you followed my podcast or you read the book or followed anything to do with us, you know that we're big users and advocates of Slack. And if you're running a small team, it's pretty much mandatory that you use Slack. I'll get to questions towards the end. I want to really kind of do maybe just a quick 20-minute lecture on Slack and then open it up to questions. And then what I'm going to do is these recordings I'm going to post to Wistia, and I'm going to add you guys to our Wistia account as members. Okay. And it might be a few day lag because I want to edit these too, so that, you know, if there's some stuff to take out, I don't want people wasting a few minutes of their life. So I'm going to clean them up. So you might not see it immediately. So in the meantime, if you guys haven't been yet invited into the Get-Leverage Slack team, which is our internal Slack team, please give your email address now in the chat. Cool. So let me just share my screen with you and give you guys a bit of a rundown in case you haven't heard of Slack. Most of this today is going to assume that you do know what Slack is, but just to give you a very, very quick 1 minute explanation of Slack. Basically, Slack is how internal communication should be done. So the way our philosophy is, you use email for talking to clients or external people, and then you have this distinction between internal communication, which is done through Slack. And there's a ton of benefits. The main one is you can organize conversations into what they call channels. So you can have a development team and you can have a development channel. You can have a design team and a design channel. So rather than having all these emails going along with, rotating different topics, you can organize conversations into channels. Slack also has an app store with integrations into third-party tools, and they have an API, so you can customize connecting it to various things, including your own backend database. So Slack can be extremely powerful, both in terms of just organization, but also in terms of automation. And it's one of our key tools that we run Leverage on. To be honest, in the last month since Ari leaving the company, and now I've moved over from building the internal technology for the company to now focusing on client success and internal tasks and how internally we're structured on the VA side of things. It's forced me to take a look at how that side of the business was being run. And it made me realize that even though Slack has been one of our key tools for the last 2 years, and we're power users, I mean, we're even doing custom development. We have our own Slack bot. So we were already in the top 0.1% of Slack users. I've realized in that last month, we weren't even close to using Slack in the right way. And, like anything, these tools are only as good as you use them. So the purpose of today's talk is not just to tell you about this new tool, Slack, but to show you how we use Slack. Email can be a great tool in itself if you use it properly, but if not, and you have thousands of emails, it ends up just becoming a source of anxiety and a distraction. And if Slack isn't set up properly and you have a large team, it can actually decrease your productivity because you could be getting pinged and distracted constantly and your attention pulled away from where it needs to be way too much if it's not set up properly. Great. So I'm going to share my screen and show you guys Slack. Okay, so with Slack, you can have multiple accounts. You can have multiple teams. So let me go to the leverage team. This is our internal team that I'm actually going to be adding all of you to. So this is a team. And again, you can have multiple teams. If you're running multiple companies, what's really cool with Slack is you can just easily go to that other team or company. Slack, you're able to direct message people. So I could send a direct message. You can do group chat. So you can see here, I'm talking to 2 people. And then you have these things called channels, which are topics. So the first kind of aha thing that I wanted to share with you guys is naming conventions and structure of channels is super useful. So before a week ago, we just had random names for whatever we wanted to create channels for. So for one thing that was bad with the way that we were structured before is anyone on the team could create a channel. So that means we literally had hundreds of these channels that sometimes were public, and I'll get into the difference between public and private. But we had an offboarding channel, which is part of the HR department, and we had 30 people in this channel, whereas we really only needed 3 people in that channel. So there was 27 people wasting their time just kind of listening to noise that was irrelevant to them. And in Slack, you have this thing, you can see the lock up here that distinguishes that the channel is private. So the channel that I've set up for you guys is called Leverage Members. That's private. So it's invite only versus a public channel. Anyone that's a full member in your Slack account can join. So one thing that was a problem was we allowed anyone to create a channel. So it's really important that in your settings and permissions that this is set up correctly. So for instance, channel management, you can select who can create a private channel. So I've selected that I'm in charge. I'm the only person in Leverage that can create private channels. And I've selected only admins and owners can create public channels. So this forces us to stick with some consistency. That was one really big change that we've made recently, and it might sound silly, but it's really going to force structure within the company. Another thing that we've done is we've come up with naming conventions. So we have an org chart and we have different departments in the company. And what we've decided to do is, so one department is tasks, and we've put a 0 in front of it. So anything to do with the task department has a 0. And then you can see this has to do with admin tasks. This is just for vertical leaders. So we've come up with some naming conventions. So it's really easy. Even if you forgot what the channel is called, you can search and in a second pull it up. So I can see now very clearly in a grouping where all of my channels are. We have a client success department that starts with a 1, and then we have all the different categories within client success. So we've done 2 big things. We've made them private, but we've also come up with naming conventions. So you can see it's very, very easy now for me. If I want to, if I forgot what the exact name of the exec channel is, I can just search for exec and boom. Okay, it had 2 zeros in front of it, but it's super easy now for me to find versus anyone can create a channel, any name, and there's just some wasted time there. Another really big thing with Slack is muting channels. You can select when you want to be notified on things, and you have the opportunity to mute a channel. So muting a channel means you're not going to get any push notification unless someone explicitly says at Nick or at your name, which is great. So as I've been creating these, and we've just set this up recently, I'm starting to mute the ones where I don't care what the conversation is. I just want to be notified if it's relevant to me. So the BizOps vertical for tasks, I don't need to know what's going on in there unless someone directly messages me. And you can select notification preferences in an accountant profile, notifications. So if you go to your account and you go to notifications, you can also select various notification preferences. So setting that up correctly and setting up the structure of channels, and I really suggest the private channels, because you don't want, I mean, there might be some channels that you're happy to be public, like, maybe there's some just general channels that anyone can join. But for the most part, you want to have control over who in your team is a part of what. One, for data security, and privacy, but also some people don't realize what's best for them. And if you make the offboarding channel public, you're definitely going to have, in our case, many people that don't need to be in there, and wasting time, getting distracted. So you're kind of helping them you're helping force them to be more productive by implementing private channels. Let me go back to settings and permissions here. In Slack, you can select a default channel. And what I've done is you always have to have a default channel. And the default channel has to be public by default. But since I want to have this Slack structure where everything is private. So for instance, if I'm inviting you guys into Slack and I convert you to a full member, you have access at that point to all my public channels, which obviously you're in our Slack team. I can't leak that type of data. So in order for it to be private, it has to be a locked private channel. So this default channel that I've created called pending, I've made it so that no one can post a message to this channel at all. So basically it's just a dead channel. So it's a hack with Slack, since every account has to have one general or public channel. I've called it pending, and I've just made it a dead channel basically. In Slack, you can also set hours to do not disturb. So if someone writes to you during this time, it'll basically just tell them, you're off. Slack also has phone calling. So once you guys are members in the Slack account, if we need to get on a call, you can see there's a little call button. You can start a conversation with up to 15 people. Okay, and then also you can select, so one other setting that we've recently done is Slack allows you to do something called @channel. So in Slack, if I want to say something to Ben, I can say @Ben. Now Ben is the only one that gets notified. But if I say @channel, then the whole channel, so all 29 people in that account, will get notified. Now that's fine, but it can be very dangerous, especially on a channel, on a big channel like we're setting up now for our members, where there's going to be hundreds or thousands of people in there. We don't want just anyone saying @channel. So you guys or the members are going to be guests. So I've put a setting that no guest can do @channel, because you probably don't want that. And then I've also made the setting, like I was telling you, that general channel that you need to have by default in every account, only I can write in there. So now, even if I convert one of you to a full member, you can't write in that channel. It's just going to be a completely blank channel. Then I've selected, as I told you, who can create private channels. So only the owners can create that. Also, only admins and owners can remove people, because there's other settings that you can do as well. And if you have it set up incorrectly, it can be potentially dangerous. I just want to make sure that the notifications, there we go. If you go to home, and after this, I'll open it up to questions. It's really important that you have this set up right, because if anytime someone is writing in a channel, if you're getting a push notification to your phone, what I was saying earlier, that it could actually be a distraction and decrease your productivity. So what you're going to want to do is go into your notification settings, and you're only going to want to get notified when you have a direct message or a mention. So a direct message in Slack is kind of like a text or an email. Like Casey just wrote me a direct message, so I got notified for that. Or a mention is what I was calling in here, where it's in a channel and you mention someone. So like at Ben, for instance, that's a mention. So if someone's explicitly trying to reach me, then I want to get them notification. Otherwise, it's not going to disappear. It's not going to be in my face and pop up and take me away from what I'm doing. And lastly, I was mentioning this before, but Slack has integrations. So for instance, you can connect in the Slack app store various different extensions. So there's a Guggy. It sounds silly, but it makes the team culture stronger and it makes it more fun. So you can do /Guggy and write something and it puts a funny video in, and everyone loves this because it gets boring, to be honest, just plain text all the time. It lightens the mood quite a lot. So you have integrations like Guggy, but then you also have integrations with other things. So like Chargeify, if we have a failed payment, that's in there. Let me try to find the main channel for you. LDVA is our main channel. You can see if there's a calendar event that's integrated with my calendar. So automatically we'll see upcoming calendar invitations. If someone's out of the office, we get a notification. It integrates with Zapier. So we're automatically every day reminding people to clear out priority cards, and you can use your imagination from there. You can literally trigger a notification based on anything to notify you about what you want. So there's financial services this integrates. So if you have a large charge on a company credit card, you can get notified. There's a bot, I'm forgetting the name of it, but you can say, show me all transactions from last week, and it'll aggregate all of your accounts that you've connected to this bot and give you a printout of all of your charges. You can connect it to QuickBooks to get various pieces of information. You can connect it to Intercom if you're using Intercom. So if a client or if a lead is messaging you on your website, you can get a notification in Slack that that's happening. So I've just covered quite a lot. I want to stop there for a minute and answer any questions that you guys might have at this point.
My first question would be, is it better just to get an administrator to do all this, or for me to sit there and go through and set this up personally?
There's a couple things. One, we'll put together an infographic or a PDF of best practices and send that out, or put that out in the member channel. Now, a task that you could give us is you could add us to your Slack team, or you could post a task and then add the VA as an admin and have them set this up for you. But what we can't set up, or what we can't do alone, what we would need to work with you on is we would have to have a sense of what your business is, what does your org chart look like, to get a sense of what your channels are. Because what channels you would need for your business are going to be totally different than ours. Like I can guarantee you don't need a tasks-BizOps channel in your Slack account. So we would need to work with you to get that information, but once we get that, we can definitely help you to structure it in a way so that you have some naming conventions to make it effective for you. And then also a task that is starting to become popular is doing some custom integrations, like building a Slack app and things like that, helping set up Zapier to automatically trigger various notifications in your Slack account. So you don't need to know how to do all that. You can just tell us kind of what outcome you're looking for. You could just say, hey, I want to pull this information into Slack. I want to be notified when this happens. I want it to be a direct message, or I want it to be a message in this channel. That's all you need to tell us, and then we can take it from there.
A lot to take in. Glad that you can help with us, and really appreciate the fact that you're updating us on more and better practices. So your offer to put something together that will give us a best practices of what you've figured out and come up with here, that's really valuable to me. I don't know about the rest of the crowd, but I just wanted to chime in on this is really valuable, and I appreciate you doing this.
No problem. I mean, one benefit that you guys have here working with us, right, is one, we can help to implement, but in real time, every week we're learning, because we're a big team, we're 150 people servicing hundreds and hundreds of clients. Like we have over 500 clients. So we're experimenting and learning every week best practices, real life experience with these tools. It's not that we're just, watching some videos and then make suggestions to you guys based on some theory or something that we heard about. So all of my suggestions to you in these webinars and tutorials is based on actual real world experience and implementation that we found to be successful for our business. So that's really where I feel we can add the most value on these calls, is sharing with you guys. It might even be, hey, what I shared with you on last week's webinar wasn't good advice, and actually we figured out a better way of doing it. So
we appreciate that about this whole group and this process.
No, totally. Because honestly, I thought that I was an expert at Slack, and I've completely changed the structure of Slack, completely. I think that I wasn't even using it even 10% correctly before 2 weeks ago. So that's really the value I want to add to you guys on this.
Hey, Nick, can you explain how Slack integrates with Intercom, or are you doing any use of both at the same time, or are they two separate things?
Well, Intercom's purpose is different. If you guys are interested in Intercom, I'm happy next week to make the focus to be Intercom. Intercom is kind of a mix of email marketing automation with a shared inbox with your team, with live chat on a website. It's a mix of a bunch of things. So I'll go deeper into Intercom. Intercom is serving a totally different purpose. Slack is internal communication, but Slack should be kind of the source of truth. You want as much stuff to funnel into Slack as possible. So you can, if you want to, integrate Intercom into Slack. So you could create, for instance, a Slack channel where any message that comes in from Intercom gets posted to that channel, if that makes sense. And Slack either can natively integrate with that, or you could do it through Zapier. Let me share my screen and show you what I mean. So we created a channel called notification-intercom. So there's a lot of different types of notifications that you might, or alerts that you might want within your company. So best practice that we've come up with is you should have a naming convention. So for us, all notifications start with notif. That way I just have to search notif and I can see all the channels for all the notifications. So this is what it would look like in Intercom. So you can see if someone sent a message or if a new email came in or something like that. Honestly, you can get really carried away with all the different integrations. So this is one that I'm on the fence if it's even useful to bring that in. But if that's useful for your business, it's totally possible to do that integration.
I was wondering also about the data storage capacity of Slack. Can I upgrade it so I could have my files there also, or should we save files somewhere else?
You can totally save files there. If you're a paid member, I don't remember what the limitation is, if there even is one. But we were for a long time storing even these types of recordings, instead of storing it in Dropbox, storing it in a channel. Because if you title it correctly, their search capability is very strong. If I do a call with you and I post it into a call recording channel, I can just search for Ash and very quickly find the video. So a big benefit of Slack are these apps and integrations that you can do. I'm not going to have time to go through all of them, but you can connect your calendar. So I showed you earlier that anytime there's a new event, it can get posted to a channel. You can see here Dashboard 2, that's one that we've actually built. So based on various logic that we've customized, when there's certain situations with a task, I'll get a direct message and there'll be a notification in the channel. So if a new task matches a VA skill set, we're sending them a direct message as an example of some of the things that you can do with this. Slack integrates with Mode. So this is our BI tool that we use. So every day I get automatically a message to an analytics channel from Mode with all the various KPIs that I've coded. So again, I don't have to go and log into Mode to find this. I'm bringing everything into Slack. The fewer places that you have to log into and sign into, the better, in my opinion. It also integrates with Trello, so you can create a Trello card from Slack. It integrates with Zoom, which is great. So I could just do /Zoom. Here, if I wanted to start a new call, I could do /Zoom, and boom, we're in a new web conference. There's literally like thousands of these. Donut is a cool one if you're running remote team. It randomly connects 2 people on the team every week, just randomly connects. So it forces people to talk on the team. And you can see in their app store all the various apps that they have. You can see here, if you go to browse, they have it by category. So they have Evernote. They even had one for the March Madness. There was a bracket bot. So you can post your picks to this bot, and then every day it's giving an update in a channel to show who the leader is on your team. So literally anything. If you're using GitHub for your development, you can have automated notifications when your developer commits a line of code. So are you guys seeing kind of the power of Slack if you start connecting all these things? You're muted.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Now, it's not like a 2-second thing to set this up, but it's really worth the investment if you center kind of your life around this and you invest the time and we can help. It can really save you a lot of time set up properly. Oh, sorry. Someone has to mute. So BI, business intelligence. So there's a lot. Mode is probably one that you haven't heard of, and I can do a webinar just on Mode if you like. I'm blanking on the names of the ones that you've probably heard of. There's Grow. There's some, but basically a lot of them are built for people that aren't developers. So if you have people on your team that are developers, and again, this is another thing that we can help you with if you want. If you have your own database, so you're storing the data, that you can then connect Mode to your database and control all the queries and analytics that you want to calculate. So rather than it being paying hundreds or thousands of dollars a month for some of these really expensive BI tools, you can just, in my opinion, it's not even a money thing, it's just a control thing. I like to be able to completely control the KPIs that I'm calculating. So this is Mode. And again, this is a different webinar to go over Mode, but since you brought it up, I'll just show you really quickly. You can calculate your own metrics, and I'm calculating a bunch, and you can build a report. You can do Python, or you could have a developer do Python. So if there are some special things that you want calculated, like you won't be able to do this in an out of the box BI tool. So this is a fraction of the cost with more control. And you can build a report and connect this to Slack. So you get the report directly into Slack. So, I mean, we've bootstrapped this company. And a big reason why we were able to bootstrap the company is because we've automated so much shit. Like literally, 5 years ago, I would have had to have hired probably 10 full-time people to give me the reports that I'm getting for free now.
Something outside of this whole area, I've watched a video for where I think you and Nick were talking at the Genius Network, and one of the sentences was mentioned that you've automated translations, and I'm looking for a system to translate English German, German English. And if somebody already did it, I'd love to be able to learn from that or do the same.
I'm sure that there's a bot in Slack for translation. I'll take a look after this call, but I'd be surprised. And if there isn't one, I'm sure that Google Translate has an API and it would be fairly easy to build. The short answer is there's only a handful of tools that are being used, and a lot of it's word of mouth. I talk to a lot of people. So, you just mentioned this one. So that's how I found out about a lot of things. I'm currently in Portugal at Web Summit. So there's 60,000 people here and tons of demos and things like that. So I go to these sorts of conferences to see what the latest and greatest things are. But by and large, I kind of keep our stack, even though it might sound like, oh, they're doing the craziest new things and they know all these apps. There's really like only like maybe 5 tools that we're really using to run the company. But I go extremely deep with all of these tools. We do custom things. We do custom development on top of their platforms. We go deep and really become experts in all the functionalities of these tools, probably more so than most client success people on at the companies themselves. So it's really not a matter of testing a ton of tools. It's really figuring out like the good ones. And for me, a good one is one that has a good API. So you can do customization. It has to have good customer support. So you have to be able to, get quick responses or get on the phone with someone. And it has to be somewhat just mainstream for the most part. And a Zapier integration is another big plus that we look for. Zapier is an automation tool, and such a big part of how we operate is through automation that if it doesn't have a Zapier integration, it's probably not a big enough company for us to really be able to rely on. Now, there's exceptions to the rule. We're using a tool called Pingboard, which I came across, and I found that just by Googling, to be honest. So I don't try to find problems I don't have. I have a problem, like I needed an org chart, and I just started Googling best org chart tools. And I've given someone on the team, their only job is to test new tools. Well, it's one of their jobs, but someone's in charge of testing tools. So that's my long answer to your question. So yeah, tools are Slack, Intercom, Zapier, Mode, Trello, Zoom, Calendly. We're going to put together some infographics over the coming weeks. We're still in this transition process right now. And I think that with Ari leaving, it's actually allowed us to relook at from the ground up how we operate everything. And it's allowed me to look on that side of the business. And things like restructuring Slack, like we wouldn't be having this conversation if things hadn't changed in the last month. So we're going to come up with a whole bunch of new content and infographics for you guys. And you're going to kind of see how this restructuring is happening from the ground up. My focus, just so that you guys know, for the last month has really just been about stabilizing and cleaning up, which is why you haven't seen tons of blog posts from me or tons of newsletters or things like that. I've really been heads down cleaning up the company, and what that has allowed me to do, apart from doing the things that really needed to be done, it's given me so much good content to share with you guys. Some of the things that we've done for client success and automating, dealing with client issues are all things that are going to be in future webinars. Any other questions, guys?
I guess I see your point with quantifying your processes as they're evolving. I guess a lot of my challenges, last week when we talked, you wanted us to use Process Street, and then you set us up with the premium accounts on Process Street. What is your interpretation for the point of Process Street so I can wrap my mind around it?
It's for documenting processes. I'll start with why you would want to document processes and work backwards. Documenting processes are important for a few reasons. And I'm a living example of this right now. If we didn't have processes documented, the transition of a co-founder leaving the company would just be a nightmare. But the fact that processes are documented, it means anyone is replaceable, for one thing. So documenting processes de-risks you from the company. So in a company, there's hundreds, or in our case, thousands of processes. And a process could be paying payroll. It could be hiring someone. It could be firing someone. It could be posting to Facebook. If you have processes step by step, how those things are done, it really decreases your risk against someone leaving the company. So in our case, we had some very senior person quit the company. And if anything, we're in a way better situation now in terms of how we're structured as a company, because we could see what the processes were that person was doing. And then by having it documented and in this electronic, easy to read, easy to edit format, you can then improve those processes really easily. The last thing you want in your company is to have people walking around with processes and how things are done in their head. And then if the famous, you don't want to get hit by a bus example, if someone gets hit by a bus or quits, you don't want them leaving your company with a bunch of things in their head. You want that written down somewhere. So documenting processes, one, de-risks, but two, even if they don't quit or get hit by a bus, if it's documented, you can then do what we're doing, where we rotate people once a month to do job switching. And by forcing other people to follow someone else's process, it allows just fresh eyes on things. And every single time we do a rotation, there's an improvement to a process. I took this concept from my days as a high frequency trader. I was forced to go on vacation for 2 weeks every year for compliance reasons to make sure that I wasn't hiding any trades. And what always happened is every time I came back to the desk, someone tweaked an algorithm for the best. And it's because if you're doing the same thing and you're looking at the same thing every day, you're just going to get used to doing it your way, and you're not going to be looking at it with fresh eyes. Another benefit of Process Street is the automations and integrations. So maybe next week I'll go deeper into this for you, Keenan. I can do, if you want, I can do a Process Street webinar. And in fact, I can have the head of client success do it from Process Street.
That's fine. I guess my initial challenge was, I get the point of the manual of me, but I guess the challenge I came with the implementation of it is there's a lot of information that needs to be gathered in the list. And do you use Process Street to gather the information, or do you use another third-party app to feed information into Process Street to filter in the list, and then you try to implement after the fact? And that part got really, really confusing.
So I'll do a webinar on this, but Process Street, we've connected it through Zapier to Intercom. So for us, and I'll show this example. If I go into Intercom and I say tag you, and you might not know what that means because I haven't shown Intercom, it will pass all the information to the checklist that's created. And I could, in one click, have a process with your name on it, with all the information I have on you from our database that's all of a sudden populated automatically into the checklist. I'll show you an example next. I'll show you an example and go deeper on this.
I fully get that, but I guess my point is, where is the beginning of the line, or is there a line between which app or system is the beginning of the line, or do you jump in anywhere along the chain to start gathering or processing information?
Well, it matters what process you're talking about. So for us, if a client, say, is complaining about a task, that will come in at first through Intercom. So that's the start of the line. But then I'll tag them in Intercom. And then that's going to generate a checklist in Process Street with steps on how we deal with client success. And it's going to populate that checklist with all of that client's information because it's passed from Intercom. And Intercom is fed information from the database. So basically, in an indirect way, that checklist, which has step-by-step what I need to do to deal with your complaint, it's showing me the steps, but then it's also passing me in that one place all of the information I have on you, which is ultimately coming from my database. So I can follow steps while knowing how much revenue you've given us, how many hours have you done the last 7 days, what are all the links to all the Trello cards, and that's all in one place in Process Street because it's connected to all these other things.
I got it. The network effect. Yeah.
And again, like these things, you guys don't need to be experts in them. That's what we're here for. You just need to be aware of them and and understand what they can do and if it fits the needs of your company. And that's really like all that you guys need to know in terms of these tools is what is it capable of. You don't need to know how to connect Process Street to Zapier or to your database. We can do that for you. But if you know that it's possible and we kind of show you what we've done, you can just say, hey, do what Leverage did for hiring, right? And we can just set that up.
I have a question about Process Street and Popify. I think that might be related to this question. As a trader, you might help us. We want to create a process for our students to learn trading, for example, time decay from options. And I wanted to create a Popify pipe for a specific strategy. So every strategy had its own pipe, and every trade would have a card that would go through the processes from review of the trade, initiate the trade, modify the trade.
And this is for teaching purposes?
For monitoring the expectancy of the trades, and also eventually later on to teach them to make sure that they are consistent and they are checking their processes, that they're following their own systems instead of making a mistake based on a judgment that are in the trade, that they're following a system and they're continuing to be removing themselves from making what I call a mistake is anything that you do outside of your system. If you lose money, but you followed your system, that's okay. But if you lose money because you change your system in the middle of your system, that's not okay. And that's why I wanted to create a process that people could say, okay, this is the system, you follow this trade, and this is how you enter, this is how you set your exits and profit taking, this is how you would, it's all set up first, and then you would go through the X number of trades, and then you could calculate your expectancy or how good you are in following that system.
Yeah, so the main difference between Pipefy and Process Street is just visual. So Pipefy follows a Kanban system, which is like push and pull, and you can define these different states and visually move what they call a card from one state to the next. In Process Street, it's just in the form of a checklist instead of a Kanban board. But ultimately, it's doing the same thing where you define steps and check off steps. They're both building out conditional logic, which basically means, you know, if someone if a client complains, you know, and they've canceled, then skip to this step. If they didn't ask to cancel, then go to this step, right? So that's conditional whenever you have if. Both companies are doing that. Pipefy is just nicer visually, and I think they have an app. But we went with Process Street. 1, we got a better deal. 2, we found their client success to be better than Pipefy's. And 3, I didn't find that the Kanban was. I found that the database feature was overkill that they have. It's more of a learning curve to Pipefy, even though it looks nicer. So there are multiple reasons, but they're both good tools. I mean, if you strongly prefer Pipefy over Process Street, like I'm not going to tell you you're crazy.
No, but you could help me with both because I'm probably going to do my initial setup, and you guys help me with Pipefy. The one thing I see that Pipefy has is this external use from people that are not members, and they can follow a certain chain and then help the database. Anyway.
Their whole database thing is complicated. I mean, I must have spent 100 hours testing Pipefy, to be honest.
Wow.
And you know, I got it, but it took a long time.
Thanks.
So for all of you guys left, if you haven't yet posted your email, post it in there, and I'm going to send you an invite now into our internal leverage Slack account, and that's going to be the members only private channel. And starting next week, we're going to do this not on this Zoom account. We're going to be setting up a webinar Zoom, so you'll have to register for these calls. Just some feedback. How did you guys like this format where it starts off with a topic and a lecture and then opening it up to more general? You kind of like having some predefined idea? Yeah. All right. So Ash liked it. Everyone else like it? Okay. Well, what topic do you guys want next week? It sounded like Process Street ended up becoming a bit of a topic. Do you want Process Street next week?
Or Intercom, one of those.
I mean, look, we'll cover all of them. I mean, we have enough tools to go over and how we use them that, you know, it's just a matter of order. So Process Street, great. Brian, did you give us your email address? And again, bear with us. We're setting up the video library. So I know that I haven't been posting these videos. It's because there's been a bug with the way that we want to use Wistia, and we're working with their customer support. But once that's sorted out, you're going to have access to a private library that's for members. Okay, well, if you guys don't have any more questions, just please post your email address, and I'll stick around for another few minutes. But otherwise, I'll see you guys next week.